want to take you back to November of 2015. It was the Los Angeles Auto Show. They were media days, and I was there to cover the press events, and I vividly remember the Volkswagen press conference because basically for 10 minutes, the president of Volkswagen of the Americas at that time just kept saying, "I'm sorry." It was all about Dieselgate. It was all about being caught and the legacy that came from it. And in the days and weeks that followed that basically mea culpa moment, Volkswagen committed to a drastically different and renewed vision for the future. They committed to electrification. And in the years since, what we've seen in that change, well, the first step is what we see beside me here. It is the Volkswagen ID.4, the first of the new generation of electric vehicles coming from Volkswagen, and it's the feature of my latest review. Naturally, the goal of electric vehicles is to not stand out too much anymore. You want them to just look and drive and feel like electrics, but on the exterior design of this VW ID.4, you certainly can tell there are some unique characteristics that do identify itself differently than anything else. It is a typical mid-size crossover design, and that's fine, that's good, but you do have a really aerodynamic exterior shape. And let's be honest, when you're trying to extend range and be efficient with the energy, you want to have minimal drag. Coefficient of drag is a measurement that is used. It's basically measured against the most efficient shape we have in the universe that we know, which is a teardrop. This is rated at 0.28. What does that mean exactly? Well, it slips through and it's very efficient in cutting through the wind. The door handles actually work towards that. They're recessed, they're not protruding out. That reduces drag. On the front end, there's a couple of cool things that you want to take a look at. The LED projector headlights actually do swivel left and right, but perhaps the character line on this EV is most notable. I mean, EVs don't need air intake, so that's why they don't have a front grille, so you have a little more creative license to do things with it. So there is an LED line that works across the front, and on the statement package you also have the Volkswagen emblem on front that lights up, illuminates at night. It really is distinctive, and I think it looks really cool. Overall, in terms of your tires, they're 19-inch standard. On the statement package like I have here, you've got 20s, and they're pretty substantial considering the size of the vehicle overall. On the back end, in terms, you also have a character line on the back side here. It's a crossover, so it has a decent amount of cargo space too. So if I open up the rear hatch here, and actually I can on the statement package just use a foot swipe, but I'm just using the fob here. If I take a look in terms of cubic feet and cargo space, with the second row seats up, you've got 858 liters of cargo space. That converts to 30.3 cubic feet. If I put those second row seats down, you've got 1,818 liters or 64.2 cubic feet. That's a lot of space, and that's contrary, I think, to some of the early EVs where really when batteries are placed behind the second row or even behind the cargo space, there was no space at all. But again, EVs are designed differently. Volkswagen has come up with their MEB, a sort of universal platform. It's going to be where all of their EVs are designed off of, and there's placement for batteries low to the bottom, which of course keeps more cargo space available. Plus the weight being centered makes for a better planted stance for driving. It's a lot of fun to drive overall. Lots of really cool things on the exterior here of the ID.4. Power and output, you're looking at an 82 kilowatt hour battery, and with the rear wheel drive version, you're looking at about 210 horsepower. If you get the dual motor all-wheel drive, that jumps up to about 300 horsepower, and that will get you pretty quick off the line. They say about 0 to 100 in about 5.6 seconds. So how far can this ID.4 go on a single charge? Well, it depends on whether you have a rear wheel drive or an all-wheel drive version. With the rear wheel, such as I'm driving, we're looking at an estimated range of 400 kilometers, which is basically about 250 miles. And with the all-wheel drive and the dual motor, it drops to 386, which is about 240 miles. It's important to note, though, that this is an estimate. It's just that. It is not an absolute. And your driving distance on a charge, similar as it would be to distance to empty in a gas-powered vehicle, can depend on a variety of factors. the way you drive, your driving style, where you drive, the conditions, the temperatures, the climate, whether you use heating or air conditioning. All these things sort of weigh in, and it's a variable. It changes as it goes along. For example, right now I'm in October, and this is an ideal time of year for electric vehicles, at least here in Ontario. I haven't needed to use the heat, save for once or twice. I certainly haven't needed to use the air conditioning, so there's less of a drain or a strain on the battery from other sources. So I've actually had much further estimated ranges when I unplug every morning. For example, this morning, the last day I'm about to drive this thing before returning it, I believe I saw my range is something like 486, so almost 500 kilometers, a good 20% above estimation. I've heard that it can go to 500. Some people have done that in their testing so far. So bottom line, there's more than enough range to get somewhere if you're thinking about driving an electric vehicle. To my mind, when it comes to electric vehicles now, we don't need to focus on range so much, and we should be focusing more on efficiency. So how efficient is an electric vehicle with the energy that it has? It's the same thing that we would be doing if we were looking at fuel economy in a gas-powered vehicle. And to that extent, this Volkswagen ID.4 is roughly in the middle of the pack to sort of lower end. I'll post the actual ratings it has just below on here in terms of how many kilowatt hours it takes to drive either 100 kilometers or 100 miles. But that's basically what we're looking at in terms of efficiency overall, and that really is a more important metric, I think, than driving range. So if you're looking to tow, the ID.4 does have the ability to tow up to 2,700 pounds, but using the all-wheel drive version of the dual motor. Now, if you do have the dual motor all-wheel drive version, it also does come standard with a hitch mount, so it's a little bit of an incentive there. So what about charge times? Well, the Volkswagen ID.4 has the capability to receive up to 125 kilowatts of charge during a DC fast charge. What that means is, according to Volkswagen, you'll go from about 5 to 80% in 38 minutes. That equates to basically 100 kilometers or 60 miles in about 10 minutes of charge. With respect to overnight charging from home on a level 2 charger, you will get basically about 7.5 hours it would take to get overnight. Obviously, you can take a trickle charge, basically in a 110 outlet. That would obviously take a lot longer. But if you don't do a lot of driving, you might want to consider just doing a slow charge, since ultimately that is better for longevity and health of a battery. Just as the exterior of this ID.4 is distinctive and it's noticeable, so too is the interior. I think what you have here is definitely distinctive. It's distinctive in a number of ways. It's a pretty minimalist design, and that, I think, is a reflection of who the builder is. The Germans, Europeans tend to like to do that with new tech. It's a very simple overall look to it. When we think about minimalist, certainly is clean. There's not a lot to it, and also the interactive nature of it. There's really no buttons. Everything is a touch point, which, if you know me, I'm not necessarily in love with. I do prefer a tactile sort of interface. So that's a bit of a challenge. I will give credit, though, the steering mounted controls, they're touch points, but there is some decent amount of haptic feedback. Not so much, though, with the center, the infotainment screen. Although there is sort of recognition, it does know for swipes and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a yin and yang. It's a bit of a good and bad. It's certainly clean and lean, but if you're used to actually having buttons to touch, it's not so much here. With the infotainment screen, it is 10-inch standard, and if you get the statement package, it jumps up to 12-inch. Touch element, very much like a pad. It has a lot of features to it. It is somewhat of a learning curve. I did find myself struggling a little bit in the beginning to figure out how to operate things, because you do have a bit of a control panel down below. So, you can access things like your parking features, or if climate controls, you first have to hit climate, and then you can get into your climate features. One thing about the climate that is kind of interesting, when you turn it on, you have different sort of customized settings. When we're typically playing with whether we want, to have defrost or up or down or recirculated air, it's almost customized customize a couple of sort of smart settings. Let's just say you're more concerned about fog, so there's a clear view setting if you want your feet are cold in the winter. So that's kind of interesting, but again, it takes a little bit of getting used to. In Canada, climate systems by default will also have a heat pump. I think it's an upgrade in the US. And the benefit of having a heat pump, of course, is it brings in any heat from ambient air on the outside, including in the wintertime, because there is some. And that heat pump effect will reduce the sort of load that the climate system would have on the battery in wintertime. So essentially, it's reducing the range loss that you see in the winter. That's one of the major reasons why EVs don't have the same range in winter as they do under warmer conditions, is because of the fact that you have to generate heat from the power, whereas in a gas internal combustion engine, you're basically drawing the excess heat from the combustion process, which helps in that regard. Also here on the center screen, you have your navigation controls, you have your vehicle settings where you can keep tabs on the amount of charge, your efficiency. If you're looking on your map, you need any distance to empty. You can control certain features, your lights, both interior and exterior. I mean, I'm not sure why this is as necessary, but it's something that you can work on just from controlling on the center screen. You have your drive mode selector also down here below, so you select your drive mode, and then on the touchscreen you can get to your eco, your comfort, your sport mode. So again, it's a little bit of a two-step process, which I'm not necessarily in love with. I would have preferred just a simple drive selector for your different modes, and that's usually, I think, the way people are used to doing it. Your volume, again, is something that you've got your only touch points here. It's a plus and a minus. And I did notice it doesn't illuminate at night, so you gotta know where it is if you're sitting in, say, in the passenger seat. There is the volume controls here on the steering wheel, and they are lit, and there is good haptic feedback there, but again, it's kind of quirky. I don't necessarily love everything about the center screen. It's just part of that minimalism, though. Another little quirky thing that you see on the interiors with respect to windows, obviously all of the four doors have power window controls, but here on the driver's side, where you would normally see 4 window buttons, there are only 2. And that doesn't mean you can't control all 4. It just means there's an extra step if you want to control either the front or the rear. So, I mean, right now I have the ability to roll down the front window, which I have here, but with the only 2 controls, if I want to access the rear, I actually have to press just above where it lights up and then says rear, and now I can roll down the rear windows. I did find out, though, as a bit of a hack, if I want to control all 4, if I hold it down again, it will flash, and then when it flashes, I can control all 4. I'm not going to do it now because one of my cameras is stuck to that window, and I don't want it to fall off, but that's what you do. Your driver information screen here is small. It's limited in what it shows, but you've got your speeds, and in this case, it's showing both kilometers an hour and miles per hour. It has your distance to empty. It has, if you're using your adaptive cruise control, it has those features as well. But one thing I really do like about it is this is a tilt and telescopic steering wheel, as most we're very much used to. And whenever you have that, typically one of the challenges is if you want to raise your wheel up or down for comfort, you don't want to block the information on the information cluster that you have in front of you. But in this case, it's mounted to the steering column. So I quite like how no matter where I am, I can still get that full vision. If I want to move the wheel up or down, this is what you can do, and I like that. Also, just on the right side of the driver information screen is where your gear selector is. So if I'm going to drive, it's a control knob on the right here. You just twist it forward into drive. To reverse, you twist it back. And then to park, there's a button on the side. There's always different unique features depending on who the automaker is. And this one, even though it's not traditional, I found it very easy to get used to. On the center screen here, if you have the upgraded statement package, you have sort of ambient lighting, which is kind of interesting. You have the ability to set the mood. There's about 30 different colors, and you can have it all as 1 or as 2. I mean, you see that more and more. And, given that this vehicle is probably speaking to a younger demographic, that's part of something that they like, and it's pretty cool. It doesn't sort of respond to the sound system. I think you see that in the Hyundais and the Kias, but it's still kind of cool to make different light patterns and, set the mood when you're driving at night. So how do you start this? How do you drive it? It's very simple. You just have to get in and sit down. So long as you have the key fob in your hand or in your pocket, I mean, it's right here, right now, it's in my pocket, it will recognize as soon as you sit down, put your foot on the brake pedal, and, you know, it activates and away you go. So you don't need to do start or stop. That said, it's interesting enough, there is sort of a typical start-stop button just on the right side of the driver column, and I couldn't figure out why that was and why you needed it, but I did realize during the week that let's just say I want to run out for something, but I've got someone in the passenger seat and they want to listen to the music. Well, you just, because you have to be in the driver's seat to activate this, keyless feature, if they're sitting there, but the key is still around, then just press that button and it will activate the auxiliary and they can listen to, music while that's happening. It also illuminates the lights outside if you needed that without actually being in the driver's seat. So there's a few things I should probably add in terms of extras in this review with electrics that I might not normally cover in a regular vehicle. Warranty is one. We get a lot of questions when we're talking about electric vehicles as to how long it's protected or warranted for. With Volkswagen's ID.4, their typical bumper-to-bumper and drivetrain warranties are as they would be with any other vehicle they sell. But specifically with respect to the high voltage systems and the battery, their warranty is 8 years or 160,000 kilometers or 100,000 miles. What does that entail? Well, the battery life in that 8 years will not drop by more than 30%. So no less than 70% of what it was when new. So if you're looking at something like this rear-wheel drive with a 400 kilometer range when new, we're looking at no less than 280 kilometers after 8 years. So if it drops below that, then the warranty is covered. Basically what that means is the degradation is not that much, and even after 8 years, you're probably driving with a range that is more than what you can use on a daily basis. Another perk that I should add for those buying here in Canada anyways, is as a bit of a carrot to offer potential buyers, Volkswagen has entered into an agreement with Electrify Canada that for the first 3 years, you will have unlimited access to their charging network. That's pretty cool. Electrify Canada is building high-powered output charging stations across the country, and basically for 3 years, you get to use them without any additional cost. It's been quite the journey for Volkswagen in 6 years, from Dieselgate to the launch of this ID.4, and I think it's a pretty positive journey so far. I quite like this ID.4. It's really got all the space a family would need. It's got plenty of range, lots of efficiency. Yeah, there's some quirks to it, but overall, it's a pretty viable vehicle that's priced right too when you consider any rebates and incentives overall. If you're in the market for an electric vehicle, or if you're now maybe looking for a second because we're that far along, you really need to check out this ID.4. I think it's going to impress a lot of people, and I think you're going to see a lot of them on the road in the years to come. That's it for this review. If you liked it, please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already, and hey, consider liking and sharing this with others as well. Don't forget to turn notifications on also. That's it for now. I'm Eric Novak. Thanks for watching. There's plenty of ways for you to keep connected with me, so check out some of my social media links, suggested videos, and I'd really love it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel.